Hey, hello.
Hi
Hi,
guys.
Jackie. Hi, Werner.
So I can see on the screen, Jackie, you've answered my first question already, which was whether you were Jacqueline or Jackie. But I see you've self-identified as Jackie, so that's what I'm going with, unless you object.
Happy with that.
And
Either will
Werner,
work for
nice to
me.
meet you.
Yeah, nice to see you, Randy.
I have as one of my intro. I'm going to ask you guys to introduce yourselves in just a minute, but I have as one of my introductory questions to ask a fun fact or where are you in the world kind of thing. And I don't mean to put you on the spot, Jackie, but I recall seeing an absolutely gorgeous picture from one of your running routes, and I don't remember where that is. So I don't want you to give your address or anything, but where in our world are you with that gorgeous view?
So I live in Cape Town in South Africa, Randy. And that particular picture that I posted that you saw as we went for a run on Chapman's Peak Drive, which is a very famous drive, actually, if you had to look it up. It's a pretty famous drive in South Africa along the coast between a place called Hout Bay and Noordhoek. And that's where that picture was from.
Well, I have not been, but I will tell you the picture made me want to visit. Right? So I may have to get out that way, and I'll say hi if I get there.
That'd be great.
As long as we started with down that road, maybe you can jump in with an intro as well, and just kind of give a nickel tour, who you are, what you do with PM Square, kind of thing.
Okay, so my name is Jackie Twigge, and I lead the financial performance analytics team in South Africa. And I've been working in this industry for over 22 years now.
So you have amassed a wealth of knowledge, I assume.
Some I've forgotten already, unfortunately.
I know how you feel. I've been at this stuff a while myself. Excuse me. All right, Werner. Now the gauntlet's been tossed. You got to throw down the vast 20 plus years of experience here.
Yeah, no. My name is Werner Coetsee. I'm also part of the South African team at PM Square. I don't have 22 years of knowledge, but I've been with PM Square for about 2 years now, and I'm an associate consultant and working my way towards catching up with Jackie's 22 years.
There you go. I hope we're all at PM Square. Now I'm going to say I don't necessarily hope that I'm at PM Square 22 years from now, but I hope we have a long time together at PM Square. Right?
Yeah.
And Werner, I know shortly we're going to place you center stage, and you're going to be the star, showing off a demo of some of the stuff you've been working on. But I really wanted to jump in a little bit and talk to Jackie about the whole topic here is the advanced analytics or innovative analytics. And I will tell you my background is, I just misspoke. My background is in analytics, and we're talking about innovative planning, right? And I know there's some crossover between the two. And I was involved in at least one major planning project because they needed someone to do ETL. So I kind of snuck in through the side door that way. And I recall it being a couple of things. One of those things was just a huge undertaking. The company I was at did their planning forecasting monthly. So it was just no downtime, right? It was always in some part of that process. And the part I'm going to ask you a question here now, Jackie. The other part was it was cyclical. In other words, I jumped into this client kind of in the middle of the process, and so I got to learn a bit of it, but I really don't know about how you kind of start. Um, I don't know, Office of Finance, right? Or you're going to say, okay, we're going to plan stuff. How early in a company's history does that start? Or if there is a start and end to the process, or if it truly is just an ongoing kind of cyclical thing that just never begins or ends once it's in motion.
Really, that's going to depend on the specific company and the complexity of the company. Like, I'd say, so any company that wants to be successful should plan. They need to plan for anything that can come down the road, and ideally, they should plan for best case scenarios, worst case scenarios. So all companies should be planning when they start up to the company, and then how often they plan is also up to the company. Ideally, or a lot of companies, especially definitely bigger corporates, would do a budget as their initial plan, so that's their annual budget, but then they would also go and update that annual budget on either a monthly basis or a quarterly basis to update it to get a forecast to just track against what's actually happening. And yeah, does that answer your question?
It does. And I will tell you honestly, I have a bunch of questions, but I'm a little bit embarrassed because I'm sure some of them are very basic. And we want to talk a little bit about what makes advanced, right? So I will get there, I promise. But I, I said just a moment ago, I referenced the Office of Finance. And then you kind of came back and said, well, everybody should be planning. My experience kind of from the outside of planning is I know that's something that finance people do. And for my prior years as a consultant, I know that's something that gets passed along to salespeople in terms of quota. And then I know salespeople want me to bill to meet their quota, right? So that's kind of my outsider's view of planning. But it's not it, right? When you said everybody should plan, it's not just dollars and financial. Are you planning for, like if you're HR, are you planning for turnover? Are you planning for, inventory items? Are you planning for supply chain? What kinds of things does this entail? Or am I off base? Is it really mostly a financial process?
I would say completely off base. So, in my experience, planning is normally something that is from a high level driven and controlled by finance. But throughout an organization, um, you can have various different departments, and that is actually the ideal that would contribute to a plan. So, if you've got a company that plans from the bottom up, um, they would start, for instance, in the HR department, where the HR department will plan the number of heads, and then the number of heads would drive the salaries and any other employee related expenses. And then that feeds into a consolidated budget that the finance department would look at. Or you could have something like where you've got a sales department where they're just financially they plan the revenue and the revenue that they'll be chasing, but that should connect ideally to your production department so that they know what they need to be producing to have the product available to sell the product so that you can actually reach that revenue goal. So throughout the organization, it should actually be a collaborative approach of various different departments that they do their planning together. But this also would be more in bigger organizations normally, that everyone would plan together, where it comes from the bottom up and it isn't just a top down approach, which normally I've seen happen more in small organizations.
Yeah, and maybe that leads into the question I alluded to earlier about how do you go from planning to advanced planning, right? So I think the title of this webinar or live stream had something to do with advanced planning. And if I say, well, advanced planning is planning, but it's more complex, am I catching the gist of it? Or is there more different or variant kind of ways to think about this that makes things advanced?
I think I would describe advanced planning as an organization where you're not planning. So if it's a top-down approach, it's going to be not as advanced. Where bottom up, it's going to be a lot more detailed, so that's going to already make it more advanced. It's going to have to do with the tools that you use in the organization. Are you still using Excel for your planning purposes, or do you actually have an advanced planning tool that is already integrated with your ERP system and other data sources within your organization, where the data gets pulled in automatically into the system so that everyone's looking at the same data, and then that's what's used as your actuals and maybe as a base for some of your forecasting? Where if it's in an environment where the planning isn't that advanced, you still have individuals having to go and source information separately, pull it into an Excel environment where it's a spreadsheet that one person has access to. There's no audit control. Maybe someone else plans something in another Excel spreadsheet and they've only extracted their actual data today. So between the two, they're looking at different sources of the truth. Like you don't have one version of the truth. So I'd definitely say you start then getting more advanced if you've got a centralized tool where you've got your business rules built into it, and then also specific outputs. And you've also got a tool where you can do, instead of having multiple spreadsheets where one is for actuals, one's for forecast, one's for budget, in your tool you've got multiple scenarios you've got that you can use for what if analysis. And you can have a best case scenario, worst case scenario. Yeah, so I'd say, and then also being in an environment where you become moving more towards an advanced area where you've put yourself in a position where you can react quickly to any changes, and you can quickly make changes. For instance, I need to go and quickly update something like CPI, and it needs to impact all of the numbers, and I can do that if I've got a more advanced system.
So I think I've got the answer from the answer you just gave, but I'm going to ask you to keep me honest, right? And correct me if I'm wrong. One of the things that I've always said, for my background is in analytics, right? Data warehousing, data analysis, etc. And one of the things I've said to a lot of people is, look, you can do this stuff with Excel, right? So when they do tool evaluation, should I take brand A or brand B, or go with something homegrown or what have you? And my emphasis is always, you can do this with Excel. That's not to push Excel as a solution, but rather to say, look, process and organization and planning of the project are more important ultimately than the tool that you choose to do it. And it sounds kind of like that is what you're describing, from going from planning to advanced planning. But I wonder if once you get to that level you were referencing, is it even possible to do that with Excel alone? Right? Do you need to get a tool to do that? Or can you do it with Excel, right?
Yeah. So there's a lot you can do with Excel. I think in today's day and age, with the amount of data organizations have, that's where you're going to start running into problems, just with millions and millions of records. So if you think of having to pull in millions of, take the transactional data in an organization and how many records that would be that they need to pull in, and then if you still want to build a model where you do complex calculations, there's gonna unfortunately be a point where Excel is going to become very slow and it's not going to be able to handle that volume. So I'd definitely say there is a point where, from a performance perspective, you definitely would rather want to look into a planning tool that has been built to deal with something like that rather than using Excel. And then again, I touched on it, but then with Excel, you don't necessarily have one version of the truth. You can't automate your uploads from source systems into Excel. So there's a lot of manual work that the finance team, whoever is responsible for the planning, would have to go through. And then also there's no audit trail. So if someone makes a change in Excel, you're not going to be able to go and track who made that change. Security is also an issue with Excel. It's not, where in some planning tools you can make your security very specific. With Excel you can't. It's not as easy to secure your Excel files as it is in a system, and giving everyone access and controlling it centrally.
So again, I'm going to jump ahead and make an assumption, but you correct me.
Mhm.
With the complexity you've described and you were just describing, it seems like, all right, Excel's not practical for that. We have to have some tool or tools to be able to implement the security and implement the fast response times and the audit trails, et cetera. But I'm going to guess, just based on your knowledge of planning tools, that the tool doesn't force a process on you, that you have to marry that technology with some business process and some business rules and business acumen to make that happen, right?
Yes, definitely.
Yeah. So if I don't know if I were Acme Corporation and I picked up the phone and said, Jackie, come help me, and you said, what do you got? You're not just interested in the software that I'm using, but you're interested in seeing that what does your planning look like, right?
Yes, yeah, it would definitely be a case of if we'd have to come in, understand the planning process, understand the business rules, understand what the client needs and what they're interested in. Are they just looking at doing an annual budget? Are they looking at a rolling forecast, a 5-year forecast? What systems they already have in-house, or the source data that would be we'd work with. You'd have to understand the whole environment. And then also very important, what the output is that they want at the end of the day.
Yeah, I guess I hadn't thought about that, right? But what your objective is would play a huge role in what you're doing with that. Makes sense.
And I think also understanding the company culture, how mature they are, what skills they have in-house, all of that would have an impact.
Right. So it would, I gather, be an evolution of sorts, is that you could start with planning being a very simple thing. We're going to put some numbers together for next fiscal year. And then as it grows, it can get more complex and integrate more departments and be more frequent, and et cetera, right?
Yes,
and I think we had talked before this just a touch about also integrating like a 360 approach where you say, okay, we did planning for last fiscal year. How did we do? And then using those results to get better at planning for future years.
Sorry, is there a question?
I was just asking you to agree with me.
Okay, I agree 100%, Randy.
No, my kind of point of curiosity there was we tend to, or at least I tend to, when I hear FP&A or planning, right, those pieces of vocabulary, think, oh, that's this group over here, right? And you operate in a vacuum, and you got to go up to the accounting department floor to know anything about it, and it's kind of a segregated thing. But really, I think it involves more than that, because you can't just plan on its own. You have to be able to look at the results of that, analyze those results to see how you've done, and then maybe get into even the predictive analytics business to see if we change the frequency of how often we plan, is that likely to make us more accurate in our planning? And really bringing in more than just FP&A, but the whole data world, the whole analytics world, and the kind of professional acumen that goes with that from different departments, everybody from the head of HR to the head of IT, I would imagine. I don't know if that makes sense as a best practice. Is that something that you've seen or you would recommend to get that wide range of input in a planning environment?
I'd say, if I understand it correctly, it definitely is why you would plan, as you definitely want to start looking at tools that have the a predictive forecasting capability, so that you can try and get closer to, with minimal effort, get closer to accurate forecasts, which then also opens up I think a big thing with these kinds of tools, it is to give the resources that do the planning in organizations the opportunity to rather do the analysis and use the data that's been churned out, rather than spending all of their time having to get all the data together and build a plan, which historically is what used to happen. You already have people that work, let's say it's the finance department doing the planning. They already have their day jobs, and then on top of that, they get thrown into a cycle where they've got to do the budget, or then after that they've got to do the forecast,
Right.
and then that just doesn't leave a lot of time to actually use what they build at the end of the day to do proper analysis and actually then analyze that and implement strategies within the organization.
Gotcha. I'll give you a break, and then I'll also apologize to you at the same time, because I'm looking at the clock and I really do want to see what Werner has to show us. I have a lot more questions. Maybe we'll come back and do another one of these. I could dive in deeper. The process itself fascinates me. You know, how a person will sit at a desk looking at a tool or a spreadsheet and say, we made X amount this year, and I'm going to plop a number in for next year, and kind of all the different things that go into that thought process to make that number accurate. The amount of kind of industry or knowledge that goes into that is very interesting to me. Mm-hmm. So this is a bit of an inelegant segue, but I am going to segue out. Werner, thank you for being patient with us. We said we'd make you the star, so now here we are, right? We're going to give you center stage. I purposely didn't go through your script, so I don't know exactly what you're showing us. So maybe if you can give us the kind of 1 or 2 minute brief what we're going to see, and then I understand you've got a demo queued up, so I'm really anxious to see that. And Jackie, we'll come back afterwards, or you can chime in during if you want to interrupt Werner, right? And see how what he's showing us is going to play into the advanced planning piece. So Werner, if you don't mind, go ahead and take it away.
Yeah, thanks, Randy. Yeah, so from my side, we've been looking at and planning analytics and trying to get a new innovative approach to planning analytics. And in this day and age, everyone's been integrating AI and large language models and natural language. And here at PM Square, we said, okay, let's try and see what we can do, how we can innovate planning analytics. And what we've done is there's a tool from IBM called IBM watsonX Orchestrate. And we've used that and integrated it with IBM's planning analytics tool to just build some use cases to show off how AI and planning analytics, advanced or easy basic planning can be done utilizing AI. And just to give some background on watsonX Orchestrate is its main use cases is to automate static business workflows, which would be predetermined sequences like human resources, planning, plan time off requests, and stuff like talent acquisition, which could easily be automated. But those are the normal use cases which IBM kind of focuses on. But at PM Square, we said we can expand that and actually look at the planning analytics lifecycle, and we could execute some ETL functions and manipulate some driver data to actually help with the advanced planning analytics cycles.
Good. So this is not AI as in I press a button and it does a plan for me, but it's AI to help me create the plan. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. We're not there yet, but it is in the pipeline. So look out for that.
All right. Let's see what you got.
So on my screen, on the right, we have the watsonX Orchestrate Assistant. If I click over here, you would see it pops up. And just for some context, on this side of the screen is an IBM Planning Analytics report. This is just the tool that we use to create this demo on. The assistant is configured to connect to IBM Planning Analytics, but this can be connected to any data source. Doesn't matter which ERP system, as long as as it has an API connection, which can be publicly used, we can connect it and configure it. So stuff like an Oracle database or a SAP ERP system would be able to be utilized. But just some more context on this, we have a dashboard over here which shows some locations with some actual data and some budget data. The gross revenue is driven from units sold times the unit price. This is a very basic planning model, and the unit sold is our driver data. But this can be way more complex, and you can build this out into any planning model that you have that is currently available. But let's say I've been planning some budget data, and I want to clear this data. I can ask the assistant to clear the data for me. This will utilize the API and delete all the data in the underlying data sources. But then I want my data to come back because I want to do some planning on it. So I can just say reload dashboard. And this will reload the dashboard with a normal ETL process. Let's say this was a SAP ERP connection. I loaded this data from SAP into this dashboard. So, but now I want to say,
hey, Werner, sorry to interrupt you, but is the idea behind this that if I am somebody who's working on a plan, like we're looking at on the screen, it's maybe not my job or my area, or I don't have authorization to perform ETL processes back against databases, but this assistant will give me the ability to kick that process off to refresh data. So it's a way that I can do something that's controlled, but also gets me what I want without making a request from someone else.
Yes, if security and authentication allows it, if you are authenticated to run that process, which you probably would be able to be allowed to do if you are part of that team, then yes, absolutely. But that would depend on the client's security configuration. So let's say I would only be able to load Massachusetts data. This would not allow me to load data for Florida. So I would be able to load the data for Massachusetts or Maryland, but not Florida.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And that's all dependent on the underlying ERP system or the processes which do the actual loading into the system behind the visualization. So then let's say for instance I want to change some of this data. I see that Maryland, I've budgeted only 2 units sold, but my actual say it's 6. I wouldn't, in a normal situation, you wouldn't change the units sold. You would change something like gross margin or something like CPI, like Jackie mentioned, drivers that actually drive your units sold and affect your gross revenue. But just for this instance, we're going to change the units sold. So I would just say load data. And I would like to load Maryland. And I would like to load budget data. And I would like to load the value of 6. So what this did is this invoked a action. So the data loaded successfully. This load data is invoking a action called load data, which is a workflow which we created in watsonX Orchestrate to load the data, and it invokes a skill that calls the process on the back end. So that is the actual API request, which happens. And if we refresh, we see that the data has been loaded successfully. So we did not have to go into our ETL tool or into our ERP system and kick off any process. We did it straight from our dashboard. We didn't have to log into multiple accounts or multiple programs to get this working. And we saved some time. Because
Werner, I want to ask you a technology question in a minute.
Yeah.
But Jackie, I wanted to kind of circle back. I think Werner just brushed up against it. You were talking about getting from analytics to, or excuse me, from planning to advanced planning. One of the things was being able to be more responsive and react more quickly. And it looks like what Werner is showing us is something that can make that happen, right? Because instead of having to go and put the requisition in to have somebody from IT run an ETL job, I can do it right here from this dashboard that I'm looking at. Mentally say, oh, that's not a number I want to look at. I need to change that from, I think it was 2 to 6, and then just make it happen on the dashboard. Is that what we're seeing in here, kind of in line with what you were thinking of when you were talking about the advanced planning versus just planning, or part of that evolution you were referencing?
It's a portion of it. It's a small portion of it, but it's a portion of it. I'd say already things being faster is, if you look here when Werner showed in the beginning about just using the assistant, he quickly refreshed actual data from a source system where he didn't have to wait for IT. And then he could also go and update numbers. He can, from this screen, do multiple functions without having to navigate to other screens and having to go and find a process in another environment to execute it. Like, he can do, this dashboard could be set up so that he could do everything that he might have had to use 3 different systems to do it, but now he can do it all from just one screen, just with natural text.
Yep.
I realize we're a couple of minutes over. I don't have a red flag in front of me yet on the screen, so unless our producer cuts us off, I'm going to ask you guys to stick around for a few minutes. Is that okay?
Yeah.
So, Werner, I did mention I wanted to ask a tech question, and I think we brushed up against the idea earlier of, full disclosure, right? We're IBM partners. We do a lot of IBM planning analytics stuff. But I think you said it didn't matter what the source was, but it also doesn't matter what the planning tool is. This is more conceptual, and we can apply these concepts kind of anywhere across the board, right?
Yeah. Yes, exactly. If we can get if we have an API configuration, we would be able to get it working. Doesn't matter the program or the source system, as long as watsonX Orchestrate is able to connect to it, we would be able to build it. Yeah.
Great. Well, and I gather if we have somebody who was interested in this and they're an IBM shop, getting to IBM Cloud and Orchestrate is a fairly straightforward process. But if they're not, there are similar tools in other environments to Orchestrate. Is that an accurate presumption on my part?
No. Here at PM Square, we've actually developed something similar using AWS. I think it's called Bedrock, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, if anyone wants to know more about that, they can reach out to us about that. Yeah.
I know everybody who sells product kind of cringes when I ask questions like that, but just as I put myself in a consumer shoes, and I hate to think that I'm locked into one thing, right, or one ecosystem. So it's great to know that we can apply that to multiple technologies and multiple areas. Oh, and I just got the high sign for us to keep going. So answer a few more questions. Yeah. Excuse me.
Yeah, right.
I think I interrupted you, Werner. Were you still demoing when I started interrupting?
Yeah, I just have a small part left, but just on what you said, where let's say you don't have to, or you have to wait for IT. This is where the strength of watsonX Orchestrate really comes in. Let's say you don't have access to the Florida data. You can say send an email or send Outlook email, and this will prompt you for. So this is connected to Outlook. So watsonX Orchestrate also comes with pre-built skills such as Teams, Slack, Outlook, a lot of other pre-built configurations and program connections. So you can send an email to IT. Let me just send one to myself and say, hey, IT, can you please load Florida data? And what this will do is that skill will then send an Outlook email if you have it configured, and that'll not load the data, but that'll help you save the time going into your email. And you sent this email, so now you can go and investigate your data further. You know this email has been sent, and they will load the data. And what they can do is they can also send an email back, and it'll let you know. They can use Orchestrate to do that, and you will get a notification right away. So if I could just show you, hey, IT, can you please load the Florida data from our administrator? So it works instantaneous if you invoke the skill.
So I'm going to maybe sneak in another question here, because as you pulled up that email, I saw that it was either to or from Oliver, right?
Yeah.
And maybe nobody listening right now knows who Oliver is, but I do. Right?
Yeah.
And I think he worked with you on Orchestrate, either in tandem on this or alongside on a different application. But it did lead me to a question about the development cycle for something like this. And, you know, if somebody picked up the phone and said, hey, PM Square, this looks cool, can we do it? Obviously, we'd want to engage that. But is it possible to do that? I'm going to use the tech term multi-threaded, right? So if I said, can Werner and Oliver work on this? Does that get you both being able to collaborate and work at the same time?
Yeah, definitely. So the watsonX Orchestrate skills are kind of JSON files that have to be coded and created, which you can collaboratively work on that. It's not necessarily, you'll save time if we work together on creating a skill. But where the strength comes in, or the multi-threading comes in, is once a skill is built, everyone can use it, and you can use it in multiple actions and multiple assistants. So if the HR team wants to load data and you have a load data from this source system skill, we can create a HR load data skill. We can create a finance load data skill. We can even create separate assistants so that they can have their own tailored actions, so that when they say load data, it comes from a specific source system. And so finance loads from SAP and HR loads from IBM Planning Analytics. So yeah.
And the stuff you're showing with these skills, I know we started off talking about advanced financial planning, but it's not limited to that, right? I think Oliver was working on something to do with the harvest application, and it's really sky's the limit on how we build this interactivity.
Yeah, so IBM's main focus is on HR and talent acquisition, but we've noticed there are use cases in every field. If you have an API, you can connect to it, and you can create a use case for it with watsonX Orchestrate, and that segments into the next part that I wanted to show off is kind of the natural language aspect of this. So if you just type in, why is the sky blue, the most generic ChatGPT prompt, it'll actually tell you why the sky is blue. And that's pretty cool already. It's doing all the skills and all the actions I want for my business, and it's acting as a large language model as well. But where the real strength comes in is if I just paste this in to save some time, is all of these questions. So when I invoke the load data skill, it asked me all of these questions. But what I did is I populated variables. But if I can just say everything in one question, I already populate all the variables. So I'm calling the skill load value or load data, and it's recognizing the load data skill, even when I'm not even saying load data. But then also it's picking up all the variables that need to be full and filling it in using natural language processing. So if I prompt this, it says data loaded successfully. And if we look, Florida actuals changed to 7. So that's where the real power of this AI assistant comes into play.
Yeah, thanks for showing that, Werner. And I don't mean to cut you off, but I am looking at the clock, and we got a few minutes extra time, but we're not going to get another extension, I don't think. I'm very interested in this, and I think as we schedule more of these events, we'll probably see more of this kind of thing, right? With the chatbot style AI and some other things. I did want to just throw out, I noticed the chatbot's name is Greg, right?
Yeah.
I assume that's open, right? And we can name your chatbot whatever you want. But I wanted to give a shout out to Greg because I think it was originally his idea to start exploring this idea with the Cognos Finance bit. So, Greg, if you're out there listening, shout out to you for that. And now you're famous as a chatbot, right? Oh, excuse me. All right, with our remaining 2 minutes, Jackie, if anyone is listening to this and saying, hey, I'd like to get more advanced in my planning, they want to reach out to PM Square, who do they reach out to?
Well, they can go to our PM Square website. I'm sure there's a bunch of contact details there. They can reach out to me, jtwigge@pmsquare.com. I'm sure they can reach out to Angela Mulsack. Sorry, Randy, you put me off
I didn't
guard
mean
there.
to make a guess at that one. Yeah, I'm sure if you go to the website, we've got a sales and we've got a support and all kinds of emails that you can use for that. But pmsquare.com is probably the place to start, I would imagine. Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely on the PM Square website. If they go to pmsquare.com under contact us, they can reach out.
Oh yeah, I see that in the comments there. Excellent. Well, I had initially, because this is the first of our series of live streams, been unsure about the half-hour time frame, and are we going to be able to fill a half hour? And here we are at 45 minutes. So I think the answer to that question was yes, we can fill a half an hour. And bringing it all back around to planning, as we plan for the future of these live streams, I think we'll start with 45 minutes as the benchmark, right? But I've never introduced myself either. So you can see my name on the screen if you're out there. I'm Randy. I work with PM Square. I'm a data guy. And I'm going to say thanks for watching and hanging out in the live stream. And Jackie and Werner, thanks a lot for being on this kind of inaugural stream of what I think is going to be a regular process now. So I'm really hopeful that we'll be able to see you again and follow up on this conversation. And Werner, I'm really excited to see what we do with more and different products, and as we get more advanced in the AI stuff and AI field as well.
Yeah, thanks for having us, Randy.
Yeah, thanks, Randy. Thanks, Werner.
Thanks, Jackie.
All righty. Bye, guys.
Bye.